Hello, everyone. I'm Charlie, and welcome back to another DraftKings DFS slate breakdown. Five-game Premier League slate on the agenda for Saturday here. It's kind of the biggest, straight Premier League slate we've got in quite some time. We've got a lot of three gamers, four gamers, quite a bit of two gamers. So yeah, I'm excited that finally have kind of a larger slate on our hands, though. If I say slate on our hands, although it is kind of let down a little bit by it is just a huge favorite slate with Liverpool at minus 900, then have like Newcastle and Arsenal both at minus 200-ish as well. So there's clearly a team to target here. Let's just say that. But before that, let's get into projected lineups and set pieces for Wolves and Arsenal. Should be Cunha and Nori in this team. If Sarabia plays, he'd be the guy who'd split. And then for Arsenal, it should be Odegaard and Rice. Bournemouth and Forest. I think it'll be Brooks and Clivert. For some reason, when Lewis Cook starts at right back, he just doesn't take sets. They're an in-swinger set piece team, which would mean I guess Cook would have to run all the way over to like the opposite side of the field. So I guess they just like screw it, just let Clivert do it. It's so bizarre. I've never seen really anything like it where sets are dependent on where a guy starts. Like if Cook starts at like defensive midfielder, I'm sure he'd take. But just for whatever reason, whenever he's at right back, no, they're like, you're not taking corners. And yeah, Brooks had a priority over Christie last game. So that should be that. Although either of those guys could end up taking over Clivert and Brooks, but I really think it'll be Clivert and Brooks. All right, Nottingham Forest should be Anderson and Elanga. They're kind of like the same size. Even though they're both righties, they split anyway. Elanga usually takes in swingers. Anderson usually takes out swingers. Brighton and Everton in this team, I think he'll be Ayari and Estupinian. Brighton are super dependent on who starts. Like if Matt O'Reilly ends up playing, he'd have priority over Estupinian. And Ayari will have, he's like he will take for sure if he plays. He has his one side of right-footed corners. So they don't really have another guy who does those. So if he doesn't play, there's a chance of monopoly, whether that be for Estupinian or Matt O'Reilly. And then for Brighton, they just hired Charlie Adams, their set piece coach, which I think is super funny. But I think it'll probably be a Lindstrom monopoly. They were pretty successful on his set pieces last game. I don't see a reason why they changed that. He played pretty well. Ashley Young is another guy who could take the. Ashley Young actually had sets over Lindstrom, not last game, but the game before. But I just feel like Lindstrom is a set piece guy. So he's my guess. Hopefully we don't see Young just to make it so there's no confusion. If they're both in, I think it's a little bit more of a 50-50. But like I said, Lindstrom is who I'd predict. Liverpool and Ipswich, another team here in Liverpool with just pretty uncertain sets at times. I just hope they continue just doing Alexander Arnold and Robertson. But of course, there's McAllister, there's Szoboszlai. All these guys could end up taking. Tsimikas, if he starts at Robertson too, would be kind of a similar option there. And then for Ipswich, it should be Leif Davis. And interestingly, there's no Johnson in projected. He ended up splitting with Leif Davis, interestingly enough, last game. Without him, I think maybe Morrissey, maybe Philogene, although that feels like a bit of a stretch. Leif Davis is the only guy you know is going to have sets for sure. Everything else is kind of up in the air with them. Southampton and Newcastle. I think it'll be a Fernandez and Manning split next game. There's a chance that one of them ends up having a slightly larger share, but who really knows? And then for Newcastle, should be Gordon and Hall mainly. Bruno Guimaraes and Tonali are always there for one-offs too. I think Guimaraes had a corner maybe last game or the game before. So it's never really a straight just set split like we see with other teams. And pricing. The first thing that I'm sure you immediately see is 12K Salah. I don't know if we've had a guy on a classic slate be this much. Like this is the most he's been for sure. He's been 11-4 once, but other than that, never even above 10.5. And this just feels like the place just to jam him. He's like what minus like 280 or something to score. He's probably the hottest player in the world right now, or one of them. Like I just see no reason not to just get there. I know he wasn't crazy against Brentford, but he's developed like a super strong floor now, even when he doesn't score. Like he's good for like a 10 to 15, even without a goal contribution. Of course, you're at 12K, you're playing for that goal contribution. But I'm just saying that like his worst case scenario isn't really that bad. Like it's like a Holland where he could drop like a two. Like Salah's not going to do that. He's a guaranteed 90-minute guy, and this is a matchup where they should probably put up 3, 4, 5 goals. So I'm happy just to cram Salah, build around him even at that 12K price range. There are alternatives though if you don't love that route. Like there is Gakpo. I wouldn't go really Liverpool attackers over Salah just because he's so much more safe compared to those guys, both for minutes, upside. He really like even at the price difference, it's not really worth the price savings isn't worth the production drop off of those other Liverpool attackers. Ishak and Gordon, though, you can make a little bit more of an argument for these guys. Ishak's like minus like 180 or something to score as well. So he's almost in that same bracket as Salah. Of course, not the floor to match him. Like Ishak will drop like a 2 to 3 or 4 potentially if he doesn't score. So of course you're definitely playing him for a goal contribution, and he's cheaper than Salah, so that's the advantage he has there. And then Gordon, just a good floor, similar upside to those guys, maybe not quite as likely to kind of nuke and drop like a 40 pointer that you can see from Ishak or Salah, but he's been super solid. Like all three of those guys just are pretty appealing. I just put Salah over Ishak and Gordon just. Then other forwards, like those are the big three I'm thinking about. There's like Cunha, though. I think Arsenal's just a tough matchup. The Arsenal guys, I think, are gonna get super overlooked here in forward at least. I just don't think they're cheap enough to warrant them going over those Newcastle guys or Salah. So they're good GPP pivots for sure. Same with like João Pedro. Like any other game besides Arsenal Newcastle, I think are gonna be pretty low owned for forwards. Chris Wood, GPP play, sure. Semenyo, GPP play. He's probably fairly priced at 7,400 too. Like that could be tempting even in cash if you can't afford to go like a Salah Ishak or a Salah Gordon. Super solid floor for Semenyo typically. They're like super injured in terms of their attackers. And because of that, he's like a guaranteed 90-minute guy too. I could definitely get behind Semenyo here. Same with Kluivert. Set pieces there. He probably gets subbed is the issue there, more likely than not compared to a Semenyo. But coming off of a hat trick and an assist against Newcastle, 50-point score. His logs are a little inflated. Like his 11.5 average is kind of got a little bit of it's not quite. It's just it's when you get like 6 goals and assists from 2 games, it becomes a little skewed. Like it's not like he's really dropping 11 points a game. It's more like sometimes he drop 40, sometimes he drop two. But even then, with how many attackers are going, like it just should help his minutes. He shouldn't be like a 60th minute sub guy. Like I could get behind a Kluivert too. Kai Havertz is probably a fair price compared to the other Arsenal attackers. He's like 2K cheaper than Martinelli and Trossard. I don't mind that, but once again, probably more of a GPP play. Nunez, if he started, that'd be just a lock probably. You go him and Salah at forward and probably call it a day. We'll see if it happens though. He played like 90 in UCL. I think there's almost zero chance, but we can dream. Anyone else that I could be tempted by? Reuter, if he starts, I don't mind that at 5K. That's a cheap forward with a lot of upside. Coming off of a goal off the bench in back-to-back games, I think he deserves a start, just never does. But if he does end up starting, I could really see myself playing that in cash and GPP and everything for 5K for sure. Anyone else? Calvert-Lewin GPP play. Some of like the Southampton guys I know are dirt cheap, and Southampton go for it if nothing else. Like they could lose like 5-2, but they'll try to attack. Like you could maybe make an argument for like Anuachu or Adam Armstrong is because they're like the min priced forwards. Archer if he starts too. Like, sure, I don't think that's a crazy route. Probably not what I'd do, but there's definitely a path there. Midfielders, Solly March could end up playing. He's coming back from injury. He's played pretty well off the bench. Did he score last game in like the FA Cup or whatever? Got an assist maybe? I don't exactly remember, but he's been playing well for sure. And he's a guy who should take if he's in. That's someone who I didn't really cross my mind, but if he starts, I imagine he'd have priority over Estupinian. 9K probably just a little expensive though. It just makes Estupinian a worse play. Odegaard 8K. He's not like that UCL price Odegaard where he's like 4 to 5K or 5,500. I think it was last game, which is just ridiculous. 8K is a lot harder to get to, especially when you consider you've got that Salah salary being used up too. Like I don't love Odegaard here. Amid a Declan Rice, I get behind at 6,600. That's a significant um price drop off on Odegaard with a similar floor and a pretty decent upside. Get that goal in UCL as well, similarly to Odegaard. So if he starts like in like a number 8 role, which is when we see either he's not if this team he's probably the deepest midfielder. I wouldn't love him that much then. But if we see like a Partey at center mid or Jorginho in there, Rice has a little bit more freedom to push up. Mourinho's kind of a guy who will stay up at times. He's similar to like a Socek, where they just kind of used him as like another postman striker, even though he's a center mid. So because of that, I think that hurts Rice a decent amount. But he's been getting there in floor pretty much anyway, even when Marino's been playing. So like if you want a safe 10, he's probably your guy there. Toma, I don't mind at 6K as well. He's been playing pretty well as well. I don't mind that. Then I think there's some really decent like 5K guys. There's Anderson, sure. My worry with Nottingham Forest is that I said this before, they're just not a possession team, even though they're doing super well in the table. They tend to just sit back on the counterattack and makes it not for great floor. Like Elliot Anderson would have had 5 points if he hadn't have scored, which is just not really what you're looking for a set piece taker. Like I could definitely see myself much preferring a David Brooks, Lindstrom, or Mateus Fernandez. I think there's a decent conversation to be had about which of these three is the best. Lindstrom coming off of that 21-point floor game against Tottenham. That's absolutely ridiculous. Do I think that's sustainable? Not at all. But this was about a goal contribution. I'd hope for a goal contribution if I'm playing him here against Brighton back line. It's been pretty vulnerable. Not a ton of clean sheets there. And I just think that's a pretty decent play at 5,600. Mateus Fernandez, if there's Manning, I'm probably off of him because I think it'll probably be a split. But that just shows you how vulnerable Nottingham Forest are just to give up DFS points. Like Mateus Fernandez on the worst team in the league, 20 points right there. And Bournemouth are a lot better than Southampton. And because of that, I think Brooks is where you go here. This is probably a core play for me. Coming off of that fantastic game against Newcastle, 18 floor points. And Newcastle's a team that like are solid. Like they're a good team. And Bournemouth absolutely hammered them there. Brooks didn't even have a goal contribution. Still had 18 floor. So like I'm all behind getting on Brooks. He should be pretty solid for minutes because once again they're missing so many attackers. So because of that, like he's probably who I put on this YouTube thumbnail. I love David Brooks here. I think you can go any combo of those three though, Fernandez, Brooks, Lindstrom, and it can't do that wrong. I'll probably end up with at least two of them in cash, I'm sure. Ayari, I don't think he has the upside on a 5 gamer. Cook, I don't mind, but like if he's at center mid where he should have sets, I'd be a little bit more tempted by that. But 4,500 is not terrible. Christie, I could get to Christie even without sets. He just gets so many weird points where like he tackles, foul draws, takes a ton of shots. And once again, like I said, I'm happy to pick against Nottingham Forest, even if they're like super high in the table. Even if Nottingham Forest win like 2-1 or whatever, they're going to give up a ton of DFS points just because that's how they play. So I love Christie here. Tonali, I never mind. How's he been recently? He's just solid. Like he tends to get there quite a bit. Small bone if he starts could be kind of interesting. I doubt he has a set share though. Like he'd have to be there without Mateus Fernandez. James Ward-Prowse, you just never will play again. But if he ever plays 3K for a set taker, I'd like that. There's no one else I think really is worth mentioning. Defenders. Alexander Arnold, he's the big name. I think you probably just play in cash. Even when he doesn't take, I've said this before, he's got the floor and the upside just to make it worth anyway. He's rarely had a bad game, gets so many goal contributions, and against a team like Ipswich where you expect them just to get hammered, I think it's very likely he gets involved and gets a goal contribution somewhere there. And even if he doesn't, he very likely can just drop 20 in floor like he did against Leicester. But yeah, give me Alexander Arnold. And then the next D slot I think is a little bit more tough. Like there's Hall, Robertson, slash Semikas, whoever starts. I think they're all fine. Estupinian, if there's no March or O'Reilly, I think is not terrible at 4,900. Ashley Young, if there's no Lindstrom, Monopoly set taker there likely if that's the case. 8 no, I think it's a tough matchup. Luke Davis, tough matchup. Kirk is at 4K. I like that a lot too. He's been pretty solid. Super attacking fullback. He's not got the best floor, but he can show it at times, especially if they get a clean sheet. I don't know if I expect this Nottingham Forest game to really be a goal fest. I think Bournemouth could very well win with clean sheet. That'd make me love Kirkes if he can get to like say 7 points in floor, which isn't crazy, but like plus a clean sheet, 3 more, 10. I'd take a 10 for 4K for sure. And then Manning. I'm always happy to play Manning whenever he starts. 5 points in 30 minutes against Forest. Love that. 9, only 60 against Tottenham. 5 against Aston Villa in 90. Not great. But he had like 13, 11, 8.5 and a half, 5 and a 60. Just a super solid player for floor. Probably going to end up having sets. And he's just a guy who just crosses from open play all the time anyway. So I really like Manning at 3,900 too. There's definitely some decent value you can really build around Salah in this slate. Anyone else to shout out? Sugawara, fine at 3K. Connor Bradley, if they rest Alexander Arnold, will be super tempting at 3K. Ben Johnson, I don't think is even that crazy at 3K as well. He had 9 points against City, which is super, super solid. Like I take that for 3K for sure. I don't think that's that crazy of a play. And I think the CB punts, as always, for your GPP builds, I never mind pairing a CB with a set taker in a GPP build, hoping for a goal off of a corner or something. Goalkeepers, crapshoot as always. And in terms of a core, Alexander Arnold, Salah, Brooks. That's what I do. I'd be happy with that. Decide whether you want to go up to a Newcastle guy. The second defender is going to be kind of difficult. Second mid is going to be pretty difficult as well. Definitely some decisions there, but I like that start. And yeah, guys, that'll be it. And I'll see you for the next one. Peace.